Is the beginning of the end, or is it just the end of the beginning, or are we in the middle of a prolonged political war? On Friday, Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan revealed in a court affidavit distributed by the Treasury that about 6.8 billion rand in payments made by the wealthy Gupta family and associated companies. And there is a distinct smell of cheese about at least some of those transactions. In the MoneyMakers this evening, I'm Bruce Whitfield, and I'll ask my guests tonight if Pravin Gordhan is fighting back, if they believe he will be able to finish his tenure as minister, and whether or not he'll even be delivering the medium-term budget policy statement next week. I'm joined by Thabi Leoka, who's economic strategist at Argon Asset Management, and Mohammed, Nalla, the head of strategic research at Nedbank Corporate and Investment Bank. Who wants to bet as to whether or not Pravin Gordhan will be delivering the medium-term budget policy statement?
What odds are you going to give me?
You're such a betting man. I'm not willing to bet at all, actually. The stakes are far too high.
Well, undoubtedly. And it seems as though we're throwing the dice on the political and economic futures of an entire country. Bruce, I'm not in the doom and gloom camp. So, I believe he'll be here for the midterm budget next week. I also maybe would go so far as to say he'll be here for the main budget next year. That's not to say that we're not going to see these political headlines continue to cause havoc in financial markets and introduce the commensurate volatility that goes with that.
Volatility is an awesome thing. Thabi Leoka, are you as optimistic as Mr. Nalla is over here that the finance minister is secure?
I agree. I think that, especially what happened last week, that Mr. Pravin Gordhan, the minister, is not actually. I think that he has a few tricks up his sleeve as well. I think the Friday move was a good one, and he is willing to. He uses the word resilience a lot, and I think that he is resilient, and I think that he'll fight for the country.
Resilient with evidence is a lot more powerful than just being resilient.
And it also shows that he has nothing to hide, and he's confident that you can investigate and open whatever cases you want against him. He has nothing to hide.
He remains serving at the pleasure of the president, however. He's always made that point. He made it in his first term as finance minister. He was removed from the job, sent out into the wilderness of local government, brought back under duress in December last year. He serves at the pleasure of the president, who's at best unpredictable when it comes to these things, or maybe entirely predictable.
He does, and he does say that a lot, and I think that it's a political statement.
It's an astute move.
Exactly. So it is really to say, over to you, Mr. President, because you are the one that endorsed this position that I hold, and he is right. He does serve at the president has chosen him. He will do his best, and he will be there. I think that he has the support of business and labor, and a lot of the public is behind him. And he has actually said to the public, look, come support me, support the Treasury, and put South Africa first.
Let me do my job,
exactly.
Quote, unquote. A very important quote there as well. He's being so distracted from the job at hand, though, Mohammed. I mean, when one looks at the sort of pressure that he is under, could you conduct your day job with Mike Brown breathing down your neck as chief executive at Nedbank to the same extent as the Hawks and the parts of the political establishment seem to be breathing down Pravin Gordhan's neck?
Yeah, look, undoubtedly it introduces an element of noise into the equation that is counterproductive. Thankfully, we've got a very deep pool of talent at National Treasury. I mean, it would be a fallacy to think that this all just sits on the finance minister's head or shoulders, for that matter. And so I'm very confident that National Treasury is a machine that continues to do the good work behind the scenes. The minister's job, being a political appointee, is partly to deflect political pressure. Yeah. So it's part and parcel of his job. It's just, the degree of that pressure at this point in time is remarkably elevated. Is it distracting him from the task at hand? Remarkably, I think not to the degree that it may have affected another individual. I mean, Thabi used the word resilient. It's very impressive that the finance minister goes on these road shows, talks a story that's yes, we can. We've committed to certain things and we can deliver on those. Comes back, faces these charges, and still maintains his game face.
Why should the ratings agencies, Thabi Leoka, give us another pass in December, if at all?
I think we're working very hard as a country.
Yeah, we always
to be
work
downgraded.
very hard. We're working hard to be downgraded. We're trying.
We are doing our utmost best to be downgraded. I think it's a very tough one, because I keep vacillating between we're not getting downgraded, we are going to get downgraded with every news that has come up. I think there's a big chance that we will not be downgraded. However, I think that the political, what let's say S&P calls institutions, that's one of the variables that they look at, and that includes politics. And I think that's where we're vulnerable.
Oh, do we react too strongly to politics? Maybe we allow political noise because we're here and because we're immersed in it and because we think we understand it. We become too obsessed with it?
I think it's become too corrosive. It's become so corrosive that it's starting to impede on economic adoption of policies, and that's where I think S&P could punish us if they do. I think that we've always been a politicized and political country, unlike if you look at Turkey or Russia, where the presidents there can do all sorts of things without the public reacting. I think we've always been a reactionary society,
which is helpful in this context. The December downgrade, yay or nay?
I think that assuming the political risk stays where it is now, so assume that status quo doesn't escalate any further, that there's a reasonable basis for Standard & Poor's to give us a pass on this one and possibly push it out another 6 months. It's not to say it's off the table completely, but if you have a look at their methodology, as Thabi has alluded to, there are a couple of metrics that have improved. I mean, for example, the stabilization of the energy system is a massive positive. It no longer represents the same hard cap to economic growth that maybe it had presented 12 to 18 months ago. So that's one dimension to look at. The other dimensions to look at would be the fact that if you look through the economic cycle, everyone knows that the current year's growth number is going to be abysmal. It already is. But a lot of people are seeing some sort of cyclical bounce come through next year. So if you start to factor through some of those issues, and like I say, with the caveat that political risk does not upset the apple cart, but they may defer it further.
So much of the data is actually going in our favor. The current account, so the economy is not growing, but that helps the current account. The trade account is looking better. Those data points are, on paper anyway, they're not reflecting the real. Not reflecting the real state of a battered South African economy. But the numbers look better. Do those numbers count in our favor?
I'd be very cautious about looking at one print. I think the current account, yes, did improve, but there are reasons why it improved, and I wouldn't use that one print and say, look, the next quarter
it works in our favor. I'm going to use it. I'm playing politics now.
But I also think that there is a danger with the current account also widening, that the trade account will deteriorate. It's just to what extent and what causes and whether we can pull it back. And that's what's important. Even talking about rating agencies don't look at just South Africa within 6 months. They want to understand what South Africa's growth profile would look like in the next 2-3 years. And if they think that South Africa will improve, helped by an improvement in commodity prices and a stabilization of global
commodity
growth.
prices can improve. Everybody sort of hangs their hat on the improvement in commodity prices. Is there any catalyst in the world that's going to lead to an improvement in commodity prices?
Well, there is, if economies, globally, the global economy, which is expected to recover somewhat in the next 2 to 3 years versus, the current.
What's the catalyst for that? This is what scares me. It keeps me awake at night.
Well, we're seeing a lot of stimulus happening. So even though stimulus in the past has not actually helped growth, but what is assumed is that what is happening in Europe and in Japan, that we could see a bit of improvement in these economies, especially Europe.
It doesn't take too much improvement in those economies actually to act as a very nice sort of rope to pull us up with.
Yes, but Bruce, in fairness, I mean, we're all looking for the catalyst to change this around. That's not even the discussion we're having, which is unfortunate, because the discussion we're having is how do we defer a ratings downgrade? We're not saying how do we change the outlook from negative to stable. That's going to require a turnaround in policies, in implementation, and in the global economy.
What we've got is a window of opportunity given to us by those nice people in Britain, the Brexit put, if you like. They've given us this opportunity, just a bit of breathing space. We've got Donald Trump, bless Donald Trump, and Hillary Clinton in the United States.
Zero yield and
zero yield in the world. That's good for us.
And that remains your overarching theme, is that ironically, despite how negative things seem in South Africa, you've got this wall of money that's flowed into emerging markets because of that global search for yield. And yes, if the Fed hikes by 25 basis points in December, or maybe even early next year, that might remove some of the impetus, but they're counterbalanced by the Bank of Japan, by the ECB, by the BOE. And so that global search for yield remains an overarching theme, which effectively, I guess, defers the hard need to make those structural reforms, because South Africa will likely still find the money. They'll just pay a little bit more for it.
Okay, so we can defer the need for the structural reforms. So in true South African style.
I didn't say we can. We can't even afford to do so. It's just globally it's played out that way.
But we're given a space in which we can. And being true South Africans, what we do is we defer.
But
that's what we do.
We do, but a lot of countries have done that. I say the same thing about Nigeria.
Yeah.
That Nigeria only realizes that it needs to diversify its economy when oil prices drop. The minute oil prices recover, suddenly the diversification discussion disappears, and then they find themselves enjoying the fruits of $100 barrel oil prices. Just speaking on S&P, what worries me about South Africa is that should we be downgraded? Are we able to come out of that, and how quickly are we?
Okay, and the question is, if we're downgraded, do we then have the catalyst to get rid of Pravin Gordhan? Because that is the one variable where 12 months into the Pravin Gordhan experiment, the president of the country, who's been looking for excuse actually has a tangible excuse.
Yeah,
and
my
a most believable excuse.
My issue with that, and I did mention it actually to Treasury, that why are you owning the rating agency discussion? Because that should be actually in the planning commission. That should be the presidency.
Commission? Oh, right, yes.
That should be in the that should be in the presidency, not at Pravin Gordhan's level. Because only one, the fiscal policy side of what, let's say, if we use S&P's variables, only one is fiscal. The other one is monetary policy. So Lesotho Kganyago is sitting there thinking, okay, I'm doing my utmost best. We actually have a good score according to S&P. I don't need to lead this. Whereas I think that the finance minister should do the same thing and say, look, we have done well, we don't want to lead it.
He's operating in a vacuum.
No, he's not, because then if we're downgraded because of politics, because of institution, then we can look at the score and say, look, monetary policy did well, fiscal policy did well, where did we mess up? Politics.
But in politics, does politics matter? Politics' greatest tool is the scapegoat.
But then at least we can see who dropped the ball.
Yeah.
Whereas if we get downgraded with Pravin sitting there leading the discussion, it's very easy for everyone to say, you're the fall guy, you're the reason why we got downgraded.
Last word to you, Mohammed.
I mean, Bruce, let's maybe turn that narrative around. Let's turn your bearishness around and say...
My bearishness?
Your bearishness.
No, I'm not bearish.
Undoubtedly, there is a narrative out there. There is a school of thought that believes that Pravin's fate is tied to the ratings agency's decision. Surely the ratings agencies know this as well. So why catalyze the demise of South Africa when effectively, if there's no substantive reason to downgrade now...
If we are that vulnerable, then we should be downgraded.
To defer it and utilize the time that buys to embolden a finance minister that has shown a commitment to fiscal prudence, that has shown a commitment to reform at state-owned enterprises, and give him more ammunition.
Thabi Leoka, economic strategist at Argon Asset Management, and Mohammed Nalla, the head of strategic research at Nedbank Corporate and Investment Bank. Thank you both for joining me this evening. I'm not bearish. Some people say I'm full of bullish. But that's enough for this evening. Thank you so much for watching the Moneymakers. Till tomorrow. Bye-bye.